Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Friday. Ashley Benefield took the stand this morning. She just finished up with Direct, and then we went to lunch, but I can't upload an hour or more to YouTube. It fails, so we're going to break this into two parts, the Direct and then what comes later. We're going to jump in, but first, before we get started, you know the drill. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, share it with your friends, and you can ring my bell if you want notifications of when I post new content. Music fact of the day: the amazing song The Dance by Garth Brooks had very different lyrics, but the writer says those lyrics were lost in a move and they were never found. Now, the version we all know today was inspired by the movie Peggy Sue Got Married. One of my favorite songs ever. All right, let's just jump in. There was a witness that went on before Ashley, Faith Brown. It was her family court attorney. And essentially, she was testifying that Doug's attorney who testified, her name was Stephanie Murphy, got the dates wrong about what was being heard on the 30th. We know Doug's attorney said it was supposed to be about releasing that report. Ashley's family attorney said this was about the domestic violence injunction. The reason the defense is doing this is because we know that is part of the state's motive as to why Doug was shot and killed, because according to Doug's attorney, that report was coming out and Ashley did not want him to know how she really felt. So that was really just the summary of her testimony. She went through some emails. Let's jump into Ashley's testimony. I am not shocked that she took the stand. And then again, I am shocked. She's maintained her silence. Now, we did have an idea of her side of the story from the Stand Your Ground hearing that was held last year where it was denied. And that's why we're here at trial. She starts off by talking about early childhood. She was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, and grew up in Annapolis, Maryland. Her dad was a Navy pilot, and her mom was a stay-at-home mom because of her dad's schedule. She said her parents instilled empathy and compassion in her. She was an only child, and her parents were active in her life. They talk about her interests. She likes ballet, gardening, art, painting, sculpting, and things like that. She talks about high school, and she finished her credits her senior year through an accredited homeschool program so that she could focus on practicing ballet during the day. She retired from ballet after tearing her hamstring. She met Doug August 25th, 2016, and her first impression was he was very confident in who he was, passionate about his work, and was fascinating to talk to. She said he was funny, smart, charming, and they instantly clicked. They talk about Doug being a veteran of the Navy. He was in naval aviation. Then they move into asking about Doug later on to her, and she says he didn't turn out to be who she thought he was. They quickly move into the day of the shooting. They were packing and loading the boxes, and they were going to load Ashley's things first, so when they got to Maryland, it would be the first thing that was unloaded. She said they loaded a big box together. Then she realized the boxes were mixed up. She pointed that out and says Doug got offended and upset. He said it shouldn't be your house, my house, and you need to start acting like a wife. She tried to change the subject, but he was getting more upset, aggressive, and threatening. She tried to avoid confrontation by getting him to leave, saying that they should be done for the day, but she said Doug didn't listen to her. At this point, she says he body checked her shoulder to shoulder. It caught her off guard and she almost fell. At this point, she said Doug was hostile and mumbling under his breath and glaring at her. Her concern was the situation was escalating and he wanted to blow up on her. Again, she said she wanted to be done for the day and he body checks her again. After that, she said they were in the hallway walking in opposite directions. He had a box, looked her in the eye, and drove the corner of that box into her right side in the hip area. She said it burned. They show photos of the scratches that were taken at the sheriff's office that night. And she said she apologized to Doug because she did not want him to get more upset. Doug went to the garage with the box and got into a back and forth about being done for the day. They ended up in their daughter's bedroom. Doug was screaming at her, calling her names, and says, "I can see you're trying to leave me." He said, "I don't have to leave. I can stay. I'm your husband." She ran to the front door and she didn't make it. She said he stopped her and grabbed her by the hand and yanked her back. Then he positioned himself between Ashley and the door and asked, "Where the F do you think you're going?" She said, "I'm done. You need to leave now." She said his reaction was, "You can't effing leave me." And at this point, she says he hit her in the side of her head. They show a photo of her face. She said it was swelling, puffy, discolored around her eye. And the defense asked Ashley if her eye was drooping, and she said yes. She said he had never hit her before, so she ran to the bedroom and got her gun. She then heard the door hit the door jam, and Doug was standing in the doorway. She said his face was red, the veins were bulging in his neck, and he was looking at her. She said he didn't look like himself, and his eyes were black. He said, "You're effing done." So she held the gun out and told him to stop. At this point, she said Doug got into a fighting stance, started moving his hands around and making jerking motions. She thought he would leave after seeing the gun, but he didn't, and she thought he was going to kill her. He advanced towards her and she started pulling the trigger, but he kept coming. She said she tried to get away, but he kept coming. She said his feet slipped out and his legs went in the air, and then she ran to a neighbor's house for help. She said she shot him because she was scared he would kill her and she was trapped. He wouldn't let her leave. She said she feels horrible about what happened because he's the father of her child. At this point, they called just a brief recess. She was on the stand, emotional, and it was about a 5-minute break. And they come back and talk about the location of the gun in that room. She said it was on a storage bin on top of her laundry basket. You know, those plastic storage bins that have the drawers. She said Emerson, their daughter, was 2 at the time of the shooting and was not able to access that storage bin. The defense shows a photo of her concealed weapons permit. They point out her eyelids look the same and different from that photo at the sheriff's office, and they put that photo up on the screen. She said Doug told her he loved her 4 days after they met. He flew her to South Carolina where he lived and proposed, and she said yes. That was on September 7th of 2016. He was 54, Ashley was 24. When she moved in, she said it was challenging. Doug had not told his daughter Eva they were married, and understandably, Eva was upset, especially with her mom passing away just 9 months earlier. And Ashley said it was difficult because she was a complete stranger who was moving in. When asked if Doug was the man she thought she married, she said, at first, he was loving and attentive, and they did everything together. He made her feel loved and special, and he was always looking for ways to be with her and do things with her. She said before she and Doug met, she had a cruise planned with her mom and a friend, and they would text while she was gone. They bring in texts from Doug while she was on the cruise. The defense is picking out things in the text, and they did not give any context to these text messages. So we're all kind of curious what happened. But it said, like always, being armed, understanding them, and how to conduct warfare for the kingdom. If I dwelled on it, I would go into a rage and remove them from the earth. I desire to exterminate them, and holding back is a challenge. They're rats, and they should be removed. Last night, those jerks arguing near you put me in sheer murderous mode, but I couldn't have defended you. Only you with me over time will remove the images in my head. You being taken advantage of makes me explode with anger to take them out. God made you for me. You haven't seen the warrior side and never want to. We went from joy and passion to now I'm in a testosterone rage inside, but kill the bad people. She said they had been married a month when she got these texts, and she wrote him off because he was her new husband, and she thought he was being protective and kind of found it flattering. 3 months into the marriage, she started to think he wasn't who she thought he was. When she got back from the cruise, he got controlling and possessive, criticizing things like her makeup, how she did her hair, how she dressed, and she said she changed those things to make Doug happy. She said there's one incident that stands out from early on when a friend came to town and they went to dinner with this friend. When they went to leave, Doug had been drinking, and Ashley said she would drive home. She said Doug got offended and screamed the entire way home. She said he just needed to go to bed, which set him off, and he tried to flip the dining room table. He was screaming, threw a chair at her, and later he apologized. They give another example of when they had gone to church, and afterwards she talked to the pastor in the lobby, and at one point Doug stormed off. So she met him in the parking lot. He cussed at her and called her names. He accused her of having a thing for the pastor and screamed at her all the way home. They talked about him hurting their pets. She said it happened a handful of times. After a dark episode, he would be up or down, sweet, apologetic, things would be good. Ashley was cleaning and going through old cell phones that were at Doug's house, including iPads, and found a text message between Doug and his deceased wife, Renee. The text from Renee says, I was deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you through finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on New Year's Eve on our honeymoon because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You holding a gun to your head twice in my home that I opened to you with my children who still love you. Having to sell everything down to my wedding ring. Finding out you were on Viagra, which all you had to do was tell me. You know I wouldn't care. Trying to film us making love on our honeymoon. Finding out you wore eye pencil and on and on. I don't know if eye pencil means like eyeliner. I guess it does. I call it eyeliner. You guys can let me know if you think that means eyeliner. She goes on to say, I love you so much, I didn't care. That's why I was shocked you would take pictures of me without asking. Back to Ashley, she said when Doug would go off, it would be as simple as him yelling, cussing, name calling, throwing things, breaking things, smashing things. He would come at her like he was going to hit her. And he told her she was lucky he punched walls instead of her. One time they had an argument and he came at her in an aggressive way. So their dog Sully jumped in between them. And according to Ashley, he punched the dog so hard it rendered the dog unconscious. Ashley thought he killed the dog. Another time he hit and kicked the dog, threw their cat multiple times, and Ashley said she was walking on eggshells. If she said the wrong thing, he would get mad. He would call her a whore if she wore the wrong thing. One incident in June of 2017, they were arguing and Doug pulled out a gun. He waved around the firearm and threw it at her. She said it hit the wall and it put a hole in the wall. She tried to leave and he put the gun to his head, saying that he would hurt himself and she would have to watch. That was the incident where he shot the hole in the ceiling, which he did admit to. Around July or August, she found out she was pregnant soon after that incident took place with the firearm. She said the pregnancy wasn't planned and that the last thing on her mind was having a baby. But Doug had that vasectomy reversal. They talk about her tough pregnancy and her moving to Florida at the end of August 2017. Then in September, she came back to South Carolina after deciding she was going to leave Doug. She wanted to get her things and left him a letter saying why she was leaving. She said she was scared for her safety and also their unborn babies. She said the things he did before, the things he would say and do, like drive scary, almost hitting a tree once. He would get in her face, yell, advance on her. He was possessive, controlling, manipulative, scary, and unpredictable. She filed for an order of protection in addition to leaving that letter here in South Carolina. And there was a hearing, November 3rd, 2017, and the judge ruled from the bench to grant that mutual restraining order. They talk about Doug violating the order by sending her that tea set for her birthday. She said she opened it and there was an overwhelming chemical smell and she got an instant headache. She sealed it up and put it out in the garage and reported it to police. I don't know if the state is going to touch this when they cross-examine her, but that was tested and found to have no poison. October 8th, she was told by the state attorney's office no charges were being filed because he sent that tea. They move on to when their daughter was born, March 19th, 2018. Doug was in South Carolina, and this was during that mutual restraining order from South Carolina. It was set to expire, so she filed for one in Florida, and that was denied. They move on to when they have the time sharing agreement. She filed for divorce and termination of parental rights. She can't remember what she told the court in that petition, and the defense brings out a transcript. Essentially, in that report, she talked about everything we just went over. Doug also gave a deposition. He did admit to throwing the gun, punching holes in the wall, and hitting the dog. There's an objection that's sustained, and the state says it doesn't say that exactly. He admitted to placing a tracker on her car without her consent. She reported that. No charges were filed. They talk about Doug showing up unexpectedly a lot. She would see him in a rearview mirror, or he would show up at places that he would be in the parking lot, and this was in Florida. Doug, at the time, living in South Carolina. She reported all this, no charges. A neighbor saw Doug looking into her house. It was reported. They responded, no charges. One time, her and her mom came home and saw Doug in the driveway. He was on foot, and when she saw him, he ran. She called authorities several times before they sent someone out, but Doug was gone by then, and there were no charges. They show a photo of Doug shirtless. They talk about Ashley researching co-parenting with an abuser on Google on May 11th, 2020. Then they talk about the emails from her attorney that were forwarded, which was the first witness's testimony. They don't go into it. And then the defense just says no further questions. And then we went to lunch. So we'll see if taking the stand benefits her. I think she kind of had to, especially in self-defense cases. Ultimately, it's going to be up to that jury to decide whether or not they believe her. And I think this could be a very interesting deliberation for sure. That's it for the first episode. I'll be back later this evening with a recap of everything that happens after lunch. But until then, I hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.